Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite lenses I've ever used, and that is the Fujifilm XF 35mm f2. This lens was released in 2017 as a part of the Fujifilm Compact Prime series of lenses. Just a few technical specs about this lens. It has 9 elements in 6 groups with 2 aspherical elements. It has 9 aperture blades. The aperture range goes from f2 to f16, and it weighs about 170 grams. When this was released, Fujifilm already had a 35mm lens on the market, the 35mm f1.4. The big differences between that lens and this lens, one is the size. The 35-1.4 is much larger physically. Focusing systems are different. This 35mm f2 has a smoother focusing system for video, and obviously the f1.4 opens up wider than this f2. Let's go through some of the pros and cons of this lens. First, the negatives. Really, there are very few negatives to this lens in my mind. The negatives I have listed are possible negatives, depending on your viewpoint and what you like. The first one being that it is small. To me, that's a benefit, but for some people, the look of this lens just may not fit their style. Another possible negative is the focusing distance. The focusing distance to me is fine, close enough for me to get the shots that I usually want to get, but it's not a macro lens. It's not going to get extremely close. So for some people, they may want something that gets closer. That's a possible negative. But for me, it's not really a concern. I like the focusing distance on this lens. Here's a comparison of the focusing distance between this and the 16mm f2.8. They have different focusing distances, but they end up creating a similar subject size. Another possible negative is that there's no hard stops on the focusing ring, it just turns. This is similar to some of the STM style of lenses from Canon, if you're familiar with that. Now let's get to the positives. For me, there's a lot to love about this lens. I love the fact that it opens to an f2. I love that it works well for both photo and video. I love the compact size of these lenses. It's perfect for walking around and doing street photography. And it makes fitting your gear in your camera bag so much easier when you have a compact lens. I love having a 50mm equivalent lens on any camera system I use. And I love the fact that Fujifilm gives you a few choices for 35mm lenses. And 35mm on these cameras is essentially a 53mm on a full frame. I love working with that focal length. 50mm lens is what I learned on back in the day, and one lens I always return to. So having that equivalent is really nice. I absolutely love the build quality of these series of lenses. They're pretty much made of all metal. Every little detail is well thought out and well designed. The weather sealing, the sturdy metal mount, even down to the little etchings that make the numbers, and the fact that they're not just decals, they're engraved and painted in. To me, those details are awesome. And I love investing in gear that has that much attention put into the details. But most importantly, I love the images that I create with this lens. And here are just a few of the photos I made with this lens. Pretty much everything I reviewed in this channel so far is stuff I bought with my own money and stuff I used. So for the most part, I like everything I've used. But I really mean it when I say this is one of my favorite lenses I've ever tried. Just everything about it, from the compact size to the image quality to the design and build quality of the lens itself. And it's this specific series of lenses from Fuji that has me hooked into the Fuji system. Over the past couple of years, I've tried 3 different Fuji cameras, currently with the X-H1 as my main camera, which is what I'm shooting this video with now. And this was the first prime I bought, and I've tried this prime on all 3 of those cameras. And it's this lens that kept me going with the Fuji system, eventually landing me at the X-H1. And not only that, because of this lens and the 16mm and the other lenses in their lineup, I'm gonna add a second Fuji body to my kit, and eventually complete this series of compact primes, adding the 23mm and 50mm to my selection. And as I cycle through Fuji cameras throughout the years, these are going to be investments that I use for a very long time. Putting film photography aside, out of all the digital photography gear I've tried, if I had to choose one camera and one lens, it would be one of the X series cameras like the X-H1 or X-T2 and this 35mm f2 lens. I'm really comfortable with this focal length. I know how to make it do pretty much everything I want to do, and I know it's going to kick out amazing images. Unless you just hate the 50mm equivalent lens, I can recommend this lens to any Fujifilm X series camera owner. I can't think of any other lens that matches everything that this has at that $400 price range, including the build quality, the fact that it's weather resistant, the autofocus speed, the image quality. This is really a great value. And one thing I haven't mentioned yet is the buying experience of this lens is great. So you get a lens hood. It's not the best lens hood in the world, as I'm sure you've heard if you've watched other reviews on this lens. And you get a little carrying bag for the lens to protect it from dust when you store it or when you put it in your camera bag. Mine's rarely stored for any amount of time because it's always on a camera and I'm using it fairly often. If you're a Fujifilm X series camera owner and you're looking for your first prime lens, any lens in the compact prime lineup will work great. I would recommend considering this 35mm first because of the aperture range and the focal length and the image quality that it kicks out. So that's it for now. I appreciate you guys watching. If you found this channel based on this video or my 16mm f2.8 review, please consider subscribing. I'm only scratching the surface of the Fujifilm gear I want to talk about, or gear that's compatible with my Fujifilm cameras. So please subscribe and click the bell to be notified when I upload new videos. I'll do more digital photography, of course film photography, and other videos down the line. So thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon.